Welcome to LSC. It's Sports Time. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Today I have with me Pete Bacote, a longtime coach over Bethel High School and at Kecoughtan High School, and had had three boys that went through the Hampton system, and we're going to talk about Pete today. Welcome.
Welcome.
Well, you didn't grow up here. Your boys did, but you didn't.
No. I grew up in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So, and the way your all three of your boys end up being in sports, I'm assuming you played a lot of sports growing up?
Yes. In high school, I ran cross country. I played 1 year of football. I played 3 years of basketball. And
And do you remember how that experience was? Was it a bigger school than what the Hampton system has?
Oh, yeah. Philadelphia, I went to one of the smaller high schools. I went to West Philly, and we only had 3,300 students.
3,300.
So Overbrook, where Will Chamberlain went, was a big school. They had about 4,000 kids.
Wow.
And the Philadelphia school system, when I went to high school, there were 21 high schools, public high schools. There was 12 private high schools and 19 Catholic high schools. So at the end of the year, if you won the public league championship, you played the Catholic League champions for the city championship.
Okay.
And you never played in the state because it's at that time Philadelphia was not in the PIAA.
Right.
So we never got a chance to play. I don't think they ever wanted. During that era, because they had Wilt Chamberlain and Ray Scott, they didn't want the Philadelphia schools in the PIAA.
Yeah, I hear that. Now you graduated one year. You went to college, but then you went into the Air Force.
Yes.
And what was the thing that got you into the Air Force?
Well, I really don't know. It was just at the times economically, it was jobs were not easy, and the draft was coming up. And rather than get drafted and do the time in the Army, I said, well, let me join the Air Force,
Which wasn't a bad move on your part, seeing as you only put 30 years in.
Yeah.
So you stationed all over.
Right.
And before I get to where you retired, when you were stationed over in England,
yes,
you did you played ball in the service.
Yes.
And did some coaching. Talk a little bit about the playing and the coaching.
Well, then, because of the draft, a lot of people joined the Air Force. Like, for example, when I was in McGuire, New Jersey, Bill Bradley drafted by the Knicks, and the Knicks used to have their practice here because he was a reserve officer in the Air Force for 6 months. So we had a lot of, Fort Dix, I can't remember his first name, but Mix, who played for the 76ers, he was on the Army team. They had a lot of collegiate athletes in the military then. They would come in and do their 6-month reserve thing. But military football, basketball, baseball was highly competitive. A lot of guys left the service and went on to pro careers and college careers.
Well, I knew it was very competitive back then because I was in the 60s, and that was a big thing. Right. And not just football and basketball, but softball, baseball. I mean, all of it was very, very competitive. Yeah. But you also did some coaching while you was in England. Talk a little bit about that.
I did. I coached the base team in a place called RAF Fairford, and I coached a professional basketball team in an industrial city called Swindon in England.
Swindon.
Swindon is about 45 minutes from London, and we were a Division One team, and that was quite an experience.
Okay, now we're talking a little. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I want to go back to your oldest boy, Pete.
Yeah.
When you were over there and he go to school, talk about that. I mean, this was.
He started high. Well, he did middle school, and you do middle school right on the base. They had a school, they had a DOD school system. But to go to high school, he had to go to London Central, which was an international school. Kids from India, kids from France, kids from Spain. And he left home 5:30 Monday morning, and we wouldn't see him again until Friday, 9 o'clock at night.
So he was gone, almost like going away to college for the week.
Right.
So that must have been quite an experience for him, and I'm going to get Pete in here. I'm going to talk to him a little bit about that. But now, while you were in the military, you got your degree from the University of Maryland.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't understand, but this is not an easy thing to do. You have to really, what I talked about, time management. Talk a little bit about getting your degree.
You really do. It's I went to school in several places. I was in Maine. I went to the University of Maine. I took some courses from the University of Maine. Also took some courses from TCU. Wherever I went, I was building up a resume of courses I would take. But the bulk of my schooling was from the University of Maryland. Yeah.
Well, now, did they have like extension courses through the military you could get then? Or
no, you actually went to classroom. They had professors come over. The University of Maryland had a school, and so you went to school.
You actually went to classes.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Very good. Now, after all that, you got your degree in your 30 years, and your last duty station is here in Hampton.
Right, Langley, yeah.
At Langley. Now, but that wasn't necessarily your first choice. You had other things that you were also thinking about because your mother was still alive, living up in the Philadelphia area, up in Pennsylvania somewhere.
Well, when it came time for retirement, the things I considered was I considered Texas because I was at Dallas-Fort Worth, a place called Carswell. And I thought about Delaware. It'd be close to and parents getting older and those things. But then the selling point here in Hampton was that my 3 boys were settled in. They were set. Pete I wanted him to finish high school. Damon was 8th grader, 7th, 8th grader. He just come into his own. And Mark was happy-go-lucky little 4th grader.
Wherever Daddy goes, I'm happy. But how did the sports help you in the military and getting your degree and everything, and help you with your boys?
Yeah. Well, in the military, I played at what could be considered a high level. I was on the base teams, which. Like, for example, in Maine, everybody on the team, we had one guy who was All-American in Indiana. He was a navigator. And we had guys who had played for NYU, guys who had played with Bob Vega and Duke. The off guard with me had played with Bob Vega and Duke. I mean, the caliber was high.
Right.
And when you played in the base team, then there was a command team, which was if you made the all-SAC team or all-MAC team, then you really saw all kind of.
Then you really got into the competition.
Yeah. And so that was quite an experience. It was good.
And that helped you learn to manage your time, and you was able to impart this to your kids?
Oh yeah, you had to. You had to. The sports really brings out, talking about time management. I thought it was interesting. My youngest son, Mark, he was hard to get up in the mornings, get up to go to school. Come football season, when Mike Smith said 5:30 practice, you didn't have to wake him up. He was there. He was up, anxious to go, So.
Right. Well, let's talk about your 3 boys. Let's start with Pete.
Okay. Pete lives in South Jersey now. He's an accountant. He went to Temple. And
John Chaney.
He did a walk-on thing with John Chaney. He was doing well, but then he tore his ACL.
Well, back then they can't do it and fix it like they can now.
No.
So that's end of your career.
Right, and so he did well. He's doing well. He's got 2 daughters, twin daughters that are 10 years old, and living in South Jersey. He's doing okay. Matter of fact, he was down here this weekend.
Yeah, in fact, I got to meet him.
Yeah, he's a trainer, a basketball trainer. He works with Gannon Baker. With some things.
Okay.
And they've been friends since high school, and so he's doing well.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Damon. See, and I remember Damon more than anything. I mean, because he was the one that was such a presence at Hampton High School.
Yeah, Damon's a social worker up in New York. He works with special kids. He takes them to New York Yankees games, New York Giants games. He takes them deep sea fishing. He loves it. He's trying to work his way back down here. He said New York's a little expensive. But
where did he go to school?
Damon first he started out with Richmond, and of course the coach retired, and then he left after a year and went to Alabama. Had a good career at Alabama.
I remember him being down in Alabama. I did not remember him going to Richmond, but I did remember him going down to Alabama.
As a matter of fact, he was the captain of the team, defensive player of the year in Alabama his last 2 years. And then he played in Europe for about 7 years. He played all over the place.
See, that's what Tony Rutland did, who was also good friends of Damon. Tony talked about the experience of being over and playing in that league too. And then Mark, the youngest.
Yeah. Well,
not basketball, even though he was good at basketball.
Yeah. He played basketball and football for Hampton, but football was his love.
Right.
But he graduated so young from high school. We sent him to Fork Union for a year. He played at Fork Union. Then he went to JMU. Was a wide receiver at JMU for 4 years.
Right.
And when he left JMU, he played arena football for 6 years.
Okay.
And then he coached at. He was like a graduate assistant at JMU. Then he went to Morehead State in Kentucky for 2 years. Then he went to Rutgers for a year and a half, and now he's at ODU as defensive back.
He's a defensive back coach at Old Dominion, right? I want to just kind of let you sum this up. But growing up in Philadelphia and going into the military, and then coaching, and of course you was coaching over to Kecoughtan. We didn't mention this when Damon was playing over to over to Hampton, but
I was Revis behind the scenes.
And Revis wanted to know how do you stop Damon? And I was saying, hey, I'm not going to stop my boy.
No.
But I just want you to kind of summarize, if you would, if you were talking to another youngster and talking about athletics and academics and all that, what would you say to them?
Well, this 757 area, because it's funny you asked that, because my brother called one day and I told him I was on my way to a football game. He said, football game? I said, yeah, Hampton's playing Phoebus. He said, you going to a high school football game? Because in the city of Philadelphia, all the games are at 3:30.
Oh, okay.
So there are very few parents. Here, there's a lot of parent involvement. And so, from the time kids are Little League through high school, kids fight to play sports because they get a lot of attention from the adults in the area. So that promotes kids wanting to play. But my mother never saw me play a basketball game or a football game. All the games were at 3:30.
And that's a shame. Yeah. So what's your message to the kids if you had a chance to sit down and talk to some youngsters?
Well, and I do often. This is the place. It's the books and football or basketball because you can develop your skills here. Some great coaches around, but you got to have the grades too.
Right.
And a lot of kids move on to good places from here.
Right. Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Okay.
I want to thank you for tuning in to LSC and Sports Time. I want to thank my special guest, Pete Bacote. I'm your host, Bob Hintz. Until next time.